Fantasy can often be a vehicle for authors to ask and develop answers to deep-seated questions about societal norms, class structure, and so many other philosophical conundrums. This month's interviewee does that in her epic fantasy series. I'm your host, Garrett K. Jones, and for December's Author Awareness interview, I'm having a conversation with Amena Jamali. Hey, welcome back to The Right Way. A couple of things coming up that you should be aware of. Next week is my live stream. I'll be going live from my home office, and I'll be sharing the contributions that were acquired for No Shave November, as well as identifying who the top donor was. That top donor spot is going to be super important because it determines what I do with the beard that I grew for the month of November. Of course, you can tune in to that video by following me on Instagram at GKJ_publishing. I also want to remind you that there won't be any new videos on December 24th because it'll be Christmas Eve, and I will be spending that weekend with my son and my family. But don't worry, I will be back on New Year's Eve for the December Creators Corner video. Also a reminder, if you want to pick up one of these sweet Right Way shirts or a matching mug, you can find all that and so much more on Teespring. The store link is going to be found down in the video description, and there's a ton of sweet merch that you can get, so go on to that link and buy whatever you can. It's a great way to support the channel and what we do here at The Right Way. So I connected with this month's interviewee when I started promoting Season 5's Author Awareness openings. Amena was one of the first to jump on that bandwagon, and I was intrigued by the premise of her series and what she writes. I hope you enjoy watching the interview. Amena, thank you for joining me on the show. Really appreciate having you. So tell me about your work and what you write. What is it all about?
So thanks for having me. And my work, The Lord of Freedom, that's my series name. My two books are The Bell Tolling and The Resonant Bell, the first two books to be out so far. They are epic fantasy, but they're a very specific blend of epic fantasy. So a little bit of Lord of the Rings, a little bit of Chronicles of Narnia, a little bit of Aragon, if anyone's heard of that. And they form this interesting blend that's spiritual, but also action and adventure. It's a world of contrasts, so there isn't as much lead character, protagonist and antagonist side. There are lesser characters that are that. It's a very specific combination that I wanted to portray, and I've basically been refining since I was 10 years old, that would allow me to portray the things I really want to talk about, like mental health and women's issues. And so that all kind of is the overall picture of my writing.
So it sounds like with the characters being extreme ends of good and evil, it feels like there's kind of a morality tale at work in the lines of your story.
Yeah, that's really exactly it.
So how did you get into writing? Was this something that you've always wanted to do? I mean, you said that this goes back to, being a 10-year-old and having some things to say. Did you always want to be a writer, or was this kind of a new transition in your life?
I think that I've always wanted to be a storyteller of some sort. Mm-hmm. I have early childhood memories of telling stories with everything from my own fingers to magnets. Really weird thing, but magnets. I've always really wanted to be a storyteller, but being an author kind of came in at the time of being 10 years old. However, I would say that I have not since kept that dream, since sometime in high school, the love of politics and national security and very grand picture things kind of hit. So going into publishing my works is a like actually pursuing it as a dream of the last 2 years, to make it more than just a story that I wrote for my own elucidation and made it something I shared to people. So I kind of got back into it, is what I would say.
That's really cool. So, what you mentioned some books that have inspired you, like Lord of the Rings, Aragon, and Chronicles of Narnia. I'm a big fan of Chronicles and Lord of the Rings. Less so Aragon, even though I've read through the entire series. What are some of the other inspirations that you've had as a writer? I mean, obviously, politics and other issues play a big part in the formation of, based on what you've talked about, I'm assuming.
These particular stories that I mentioned are the sort of literature medium that I've always been interested in.
Mm-hmm.
But as in terms of issues, in terms of story development, in terms of the morality tale, as you mentioned, a huge influence of that has been my college studies in Western philosophy. So think Plato's Republic, Aristotle's Politics, a little bit of Machiavelli in there because we all got to love and hate him. And the works such as that. Then it's also life experience, lived experience of my faith, experience in general of what it means to be a woman in the world. Little side thing here, I work in cybersecurity, so there are a lot of experiences that come from being in that field that find their way in places I least expect it. A third thing I would say is my own experience of mental health, of what it of how that feels like, the ups and the downs of it. So a lot of that, it synthesizes for me in writing. Writing has tended to be, writing fiction particularly, has tended to be something very critical to how I think, like how I process everything that's going on with me. And then, well, it just so happened that I finally had a story to share.
What has been probably one of the biggest challenges that you have faced in the creation of your work as you've been putting together these books and getting them published and getting them out there?
So it's very funny that you ask, because I'm currently going through it. My big issue is writer's block. So I have kind of two things that happen there. Either I know I want to talk about something, but I have no idea what I want to say. And my own, well, I know it's kind of a often discussed thing these days, but imposter syndrome, like, thinking that you're not good enough for the thing you really want to do for your own passions. So that gets in the way. So I'm like, I want to express this particular aspect of morality, this particular aspect of all of these philosophical things going on in my mind. And then I doubt myself whether I'm really capable of saying the thing I really want to say. And then on the other side, I know exactly what I want to say. Like, this is my current problem. I know exactly what should come out in this chapter, and I can't say it. I can't actually get the words out onto the page, even though I have the outline, I have a beginning for the chapter, I know where I'm going, everything is supposed to be working out, like my character's not making sudden movements, but it still doesn't happen. So that, I think, is my biggest challenge, and I think there might be other people who can relate to that.
And this is kind of the wrap-up question. If you were to give advice to other would-be authors out there, regardless of genre, what would you tell them?
So I would tell them that it's really important that they know what it is in their own soul. So those sound like grandiose terms, but I have found that that is the thing that keeps me going, even when I have imposter syndrome, just envy of other authors, thinking poorly of my own writing, of my own works. That's what keeps me going, in the sense that I feel that what I have to say is still important. So I could write a dozen different things, but there is only one specific thing that would be true to who I really am and would really encapsulate what it is that I need to say, that would be true to my own voice. something that goes on in my books. Know what's really going on in your soul and what you really do need to say. And then don't let anyone else get in the way of that to the extent that they break down your own voice. So there is a place for writing critiques and writing criticism, and there's a place for reviews. And all of that should be accepted and taken graciously. But then there is a place where you have to know what you really are trying to say, and that you have to stay true to that. On the other side, I would say that it's really important to take ownership of your own work. So if you're going to make a point about something, even if it's controversial, or especially if it's controversial, at least know what you're saying before you say it. Like, think through the implications. So I have some points that are made in my writing that are frankly controversial when one takes a second at them. Sometimes you first go through controversial things. It's important to know that you are saying that. Things that are controversial should not be said, is what I'm trying to say. So stay true to your own voice and take responsibility for the things you do.
Awesome. Well, Amena, how can people get a hold of your work? How can they find you? How can they get copies of your books and make that connection?
The really easy thing to do would be, well, two really easy things. I keep saying two. Either go to Amazon and search The Bell Tolling by Amena Jamali, or go to amenajamali.com. So my name's not the easiest to spell, but hopefully somewhere in the description you'll include it. So amenajamali.com, and on that website, on my website, there is a page that says Shop Amena's Books. Very clearly written, Shop Amena's Books. And that has every link that I have been able to put together that has my books available in every medium.
Very cool.
Including autographed copies.
And what about social media?
I really do Instagram. So my handle is Isilia_archivist. My website also takes you to that. I do have Twitter and I do have Facebook. But if you want to get a hold of me, Instagram is really the best way to go.
Amena, thank you very much for being on the show. Really appreciated having you here for an interview.
Well, thank you for having me, Garrett.
You're very welcome. Now, if you're interested in connecting with Amena through social media or picking up a copy of her book, you'll find those links by visiting the video description. If you're interested in seeing the uncut version of the interview, you can easily sign up as a supporter through Patreon. There are support options of $1, $3, and $5 per month, and all patron levels get access to the uncut interviews. But the higher you go, the cooler the rewards. Hey, thanks for watching. Please hit like, hit subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications on new videos. You can support the channel on Patreon and the merch store. Those links can be found down in the video description. Make sure to tune in next week for the live stream exclusively on Instagram. See you then.